topics. And I'm really happy that everybody's tuning in. I saw my VP. Hi, welcome. Okay, so we're gonna have two segments. So the first segment is gonna be done by Miss Stephanie, and the second segment will be done by me. So let's jump right into it. Are you ready? Okay. So the first question I want to ask you today, Steph, is what is gender-based violence?
Gender-based violence, also known as GBV, is a phenomenon deeply rooted in gender inequality and continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations within all society.
Right.
Gender-based violence is violence directed against a person because of their gender. Both women and men experience gender-based violence, but the majority of the victims at this present time who've experienced forms of abuse are women and girls. It includes acts that inflict physical, mental, or sexual harm or suffering, threats of such acts, coercion, and other deprivations of liberty. It is a form of discrimination that seriously inhibits women's ability to enjoy rights and freedoms on a basis of equality with men. So there are several types of gender-based violence. So I'm going to share a couple.
Okay.
For example, child marriages, female genital mutilation, honor killings, trafficking for sex or slavery, intimate partner violence, which we all know is domestic violence, physical punishment, sexual, emotional, or psychological violence.
Okay. Wow. Thanks so much for breaking that down, because as you know, right now people, they might be confused. They don't know what is gender-based violence. Like, well, what is that? You know, and it's good that we, you know, enlighten and educate people about what it is and the types, right? And thanks for sharing that and those examples. So the second question that I want to ask is, what are some major causes that bring about GBV?
So there are several causes that bring about GBV. So firstly, I want to begin with harmful gender norms. Gender stereotypes and are often used to justify violence against women. Cultural norms often dictate men are aggressive, controlling, and dominant, while women are seen as docile, subservient, and rely on men as providers or being the head of the household. These norms can foster a culture of abuse outright, such as early and forced marriage of female genital mutilation, the latter spurred by outdated and harmful notions of female sexuality and virginity. So this is seen as a culture in many societies globally. This is seen as the norm. The patriarchal thinking still exists indirectly and directly in some communities. What is the patriarchy? And the patriarchy is commonly described as a system of social structures and practices in which men govern, oppress, and exploit women. Another cause is hunger, which I found very interesting. Just as empowering women can help eliminate hunger, food scarcity also leads to increased gender-based violence. In poverty-stricken countries, for example, Malawi, where a 2013 survey revealed that 61% of women and girls said they experienced sexual violence and 64% experienced physical violence in that ongoing food crisis. And the situation worsened in these communities. Furthermore, war and conflict. Forced marriage isn't just the result of hunger. Conflict zones have also created more child brides. Socialization. And socialization is one major leading factor. Not only does the social environment serve as a trigger for biological development, it also provides a context for learning appropriate behaviors. Whatever propensity for violence is written on an individual's biological birth certificate, it is clearly molded and shaped through the interaction of their peers, of their colleagues, or friends, through the interaction of others. There's a sizable body of evidence showing that early socialization across multiple contexts accounts for much more of the individual differences in later violent behavior. So different mechanisms have been implicated in the learning of violence. Early theory stressed the importance of reinforcement. For example, a little boy who wants a toy, but his little sister will not relinquish it. The little boy pushes and grabs the toy, and his sister relents. Aggression is seen here at a young age. Aggression, if followed by reinforcement, is not limited to tangible objects. It can include outcomes such as attention, status, and advantageous positioning in the peer status hierarchy, similar to some of the adaptive functions of aggression, which was discussed before.
Right. Yeah.
In addition, the role of reinforcement. Early formulations of social learning theory emphasize the role of observational learning. And observational learning was coined by one of my favorite psychologists, which is Albert Bandura. And he stated that individuals who see others use and obtain rewards for violence, especially others they admire, whom they look up to, or whom they cherish, are more likely to imitate them and behave violently under similar circumstances. This psychological mechanism, molding, can also explain variation in violence levels across different social groups and cultures. As violence becomes more legitimate in a social group, it is more likely that the members will conform to these emerging group norms. Some observers have described a code of violence, that characterizes the behavior of many inner city males. Status is associated with willingness to use of violence, and children emulate the toughness and violence of older male role models, persons they look up to, such as their fathers, their big brothers, their uncles.
Right.
And lastly, but one of the most crucial factor that can lead to GBV is childhood trauma. And what is childhood trauma? For example, a child who experiences neglect or abuse, or who witnesses violence at home, seeing their sisters or mothers being abused by their fathers or uncles at an early age, they can have serious psychological implications. And later on in life, this can affect their romantic relationships, where due to the emotional distress that they face, the PTSD, they may lash out to the romantic partners because of the stress that they may be going through and because of the trauma they experienced. Power struggle, financially and socially, and having a lack of attention or respect and low self-worth are other examples that can lead to gender-based violence.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing those causes. Like, that's a whole lot. What stood out for me was the social learning theory that you talked about by Bandura. And that is quite true because you see, children especially, they tend to model what they see. And that is why parenting styles and all these things, you have to be very wary of it and what you teach your child or what you allow them to witness to, right? Because we need to protect our children, because then they will grow up, like you say, and have later complications psychologically because of what they had encountered or, in their childhood. And that is the problem we face today. But I mean, this is why we have to start the conversation. We have to make people aware and for them to understand that these are the things that lead to gender-based violence, right? And even any type of violence, right? So thank you very much for that again. So the other question that I want to ask is, do you think that it is an issue faced in the Caribbean countries, in many Caribbean countries?
Yes, it is a serious issue faced across the Caribbean islands and by extent the world. And it's something that is so heartbreaking and so gruesome. And it wakes you up every morning and you question yourself and you're like, what is going on in our world? And there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. And this is where we start to educate our population and how we can protect our women and girls in society. So I want to share a couple of statistics in the Caribbean. The most common form of violence experienced by women globally is physical violence inflicted by an intimate partner, which is known as domestic violence. And now more than ever, due to the impact of COVID-19, where we're all in isolation, many persons are unemployed because they have lost their jobs. So many stress and anxiety taking place across in several homes. Due to the impact of COVID-19, we have drastically seen a rise in statistics where so many women and girls are abused by their partners.
Yeah.
And the statistics continue to increase every day. On an average, at least 1 in 3 women are beaten, coerced into sex, or otherwise abused by an intimate partner in the course of their lifetime. Within the Caribbean, violence against women is pervasive. So in a 2001 report by the Caribbean Regional Tribunal on Violence Against Women, they observed that far from being a haven, a place of peace, the home for many is a dangerous place. And, you know, it makes you wonder, because when you think of home, right? A home's supposed to be a safe place. It is where institution or family, and many women are abused by their loved ones and people whom they trust.
Yeah.
Women, unlike men, are more likely to be beaten and sometimes murdered. Not always by a stranger, but by someone they may know, someone they trust, or someone they may love or have an intimate relationship with. For example, their husband, their boyfriend, their partner, and even fathers and uncles. Gender-based violence affects a cross-section of women. It is not confined to specific groups of women in society and must be placed within a larger context of gender inequality. The pervasiveness of violence against women in the Caribbean has been highlighted in a recent report by the United Nations. According to this report, violence against women affects a significant percentage of women and girls in the Caribbean. 3 of the top 10 recorded rape rates in the world occur in the Caribbean.
Wow, look at that.
While the worldwide average for rape was 15 per 100,000, the Bahamas had an average of 103, St. Vincent and the Grenadines 112, Jamaica 51, Dominica 34, Barbados 25, and our beloved Trinidad and Tobago 18 at the time.
Wow.
The report further pointed out a survey which revealed that in 9 Caribbean countries, 48% of adolescent girls' sexual initiation was forced or somewhat forced. And just think about it. This is just the reported. Think about the unreported and the undocumented. And women and girls that are abused every day and we are unaware.
The statistics is just a fraction when you think about it. Yeah.
The UNDP Caribbean Human Development Report indicated that 30.4% women in the Caribbean report high rates of fear of sexual assault in comparison to 11.1% of men. It furthermore indicated that violent crime has been increasing in the Caribbean, and this is accompanied by a decrease in both case clear-up and conviction rates. Trinidad and Tobago, a lovely, lovely country. A lovely sugarcane sweet island. There's no words to describe the headlines that we see on a daily basis. The country that has a population of just under 1.4 million, of which about half are female.
That is
the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service reported a rise in domestic violence cases from 232 in 2019 to 558 in 2020. As many as six women were murdered in domestic violence incidents in Trinidad and Tobago within the first 2 months of 2020, which is January and February. And the rest of the months, straight down to December, the statistics kept rising. We lost so many innocent girls due to these gruesome acts. Think about Ashanti.
Yes.
There's no words to describe these gruesome acts. No words.
It's just heartbreaking.
And
like when I saw that, I was just like, wow, I'm speechless. Like, how? Why? You know,
There's no
things
words
could
to
have been
describe.
different. Yeah.
And now we are in 2021, and still this horrible and gruesome act continues to plague our globe and our land every single way. Recently, a teacher, she was murdered by her husband, and a nurse who was beaten with a hammer by her ex-lover. And you know, it's getting very much infuriating because we're in 2021 and still it continues to happen, and our heart breaks for these families, and our heart goes out to these families. And it's time we speak up and protect the women and girls in society.
That is right. That is really true. Because the thing about it is, if we don't, you know, we don't say these things, people be like, oh, what you talking about? These things don't happen, you know, it's regular crime. No, these things happening as we speak, right? I am pretty sure. And it is really sad. And this is why we have to, you know, talk about it and even enlighten them how to prevent these things from happening, right? Because if people don't know how to get out of the situation or know that there are resources, you know, they're left with no choice to be the victim that is with the abuser, and that is not safe for themselves or, you know, even if, let's say, it's a couple or anything like that and they have kids, you know, you're engaging the kids and whatnot. So thank you so much for sharing all those statistics. It's like mind-blowing. I'm sure the audience could agree. I'm seeing some of them in the comments. Yeah. So with all that being said, now I feel like you you answered this question that I'm going to ask, but I'll ask it still anyhow. Who do you think is more affected by gender-based violence, men or women, or both?
Both genders are affected. However, currently, at this time in our world and country, we see a rise in a number of cases of violence against women and girls. GBV disproportionately affects women and girls, and in situations of displacement, the risk to the exposure of GBV increases. Reasons being, again, male power and dominance, the patriarchal thinking, and lust, because so many men in society are unable to control their sexual urges and anger. And, you know, many men in society still are unable to take rejection. Look at the news. Her ex-lover abused her because he was unable to, you know.
You would never think the person that you're engaging with will do something like that until it's too late, right? Yeah. And then there's the stigma attached. Yeah. Because of men.
But it's important to note that men and boys also do face forms of abuse. Men or boys do face abuse as well. And in many instances, these cases go unreported and undocumented. Why? Because, you know, boys from an early age are taught by their parents, you know, to be strong, be brave. Don't display emotions. You're not allowed to cry. And, you know, there's a stigma attached to it in society now. And, you know, men and boys are afraid to speak up. They may be ashamed because they're unable to, you know, speak up. And because they're ashamed and the stigma that is attached to society.
Exactly. It puts pressure on them, you know, like they feel like they just can't open up as easy as women do, you know, and again, it's because society make it like that. You know, we say, oh, we're crying for, you know, like that you suck it up, right? And that is the problem. You have to let them display the emotion and
in our society, whether directly or indirectly, because, you know, boys are taught to be strong and brave and don't cry. But I want to remind everybody that boys do face emotions as well. It's okay for a boy to cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see a couple questions coming in. We'll answer it after the discussion.
Okay, so the last question that I have for you actually is, what are some ways that we can end GBV or protect our victims of GBV?
So, firstly, it's important to empower our women and girls and to educate men and boys, right? So, what is so important is parenting. It starts from home. It takes a community, not just one person, to raise a child. It starts at home, first institution or family. And if our parents continue to, educate our boys, teach your young boys, teach your sons to respect your sisters, that can have a lasting impression later on in life.
I agree.
Furthermore, raising awareness globally. So there are several NGOs and groups who are committed to continuously strengthening coordination and programming to protect women and girls in society. So, for example, the Rape Crisis Society, the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and I know you later on in the next segment, you will give the viewing audience some details on these. And right here in UWE, we continue to advocate and raise awareness. Big up to Kelsey from Catfall, PCA, Psychi. There's so many groups who continue to raise awareness on different platforms at different levels. And I think awareness is important, bringing awareness at all levels in society. And furthermore, transforming judiciary and healthcare networks. So, as I mentioned before, raising awareness at all levels. So at the national level is important. This is where our laws to protect our women and girls. And recently, our Commissioner of Police indicated that, it's a good idea for women and girls to carry around taser and pepper sprays. And I fully support that. Yes. So, is raising awareness and making it known and educating our population at all levels, educating our men and boys, changing gender norms and social attitudes. Furthermore, encouraging women and people of diverse genders, encourage women and people of diverse genders to achieve and succeed. Society has taught women and others to go quietly and not make waves. But here's your opportunity to continue to speak out, to continue advocating, to continue creating waves, continue shattering the glass ceiling. But that doesn't have to be the case. Shatter the glass ceiling. Use your voice. Continue. Keep shattering the glass ceiling. Keep speaking up. Standing against domestic violence. If you see someone in your community doing an amazing job or amazing work, recognize them. If you are able to help, for example, or NGOs, use your power to help, to help build these NGOs, help them go further so that they can continue to make a difference in society. And lastly, it's important that persons recognize the signs of a violent relationship. The quicker you spot the signs, the quicker you can act. If you find yourself in a violent relationship, seek support in a way that works for you or your situation. Seek professional help. Speak up. Don't stay silent. If you think your loved one or your family member or your friend is in trouble, don't stay quiet. Even your neighbors, if you see it, don't stay quiet. Speak up. And consent. The word consent. Consent is so important. And I think young people out there need to know the value of this word. Because consent, once two parties agree, consent is so important. Like, just Google the word consent. Consent is so important. And when a woman says no, no means no.
No.
It means no. And this should be respected.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yeah, persuasion is not acceptable at all. By all means, it is not. And I thank you so much for sharing that. Like, that has really enlightened. I'm sure the audience can agree that these are the things that we need to do to protect our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide. You know, like these are the things that we should be implementing on a a broader scale. And I would like and hope to see in the future that it continues and we continue to improve to help protect our people and our girls, especially because of, as you mentioned, they are the ones that are mostly targeted, So thank you so much. We want to look at the comments. I think we had a few questions. Let's see, how do we go back? Okay. I think I saw one question from someone.
Do you think that statistics believe that women are more affected because men would openly state that they're being abused? I wouldn't say no because okay, gender-based violence is affected by both genders, male and female. Currently, in our society, we see a number of cases of women and girls being abused, right? But I wanted persons to know that it's important to note that men and boys, they are abused too, right?
Right.
They are hurt by their partners. They do experience emotional distress. They do experience depression. They are abused too. And like I mentioned before, in society, there's a notion, there's a stigma where, men and boys are expected to, be brave, be strong.
Put up that front.
And not experience emotions, but they do. And it's time that, we need to make aware of this because, take for instance, look at the little boy that many years ago, Sean Luke, he was abused, and up to this very date, that case is still in questioning because, it's not just women and girls; it's both genders. It's just at this time there is a number of cases of women and girls being abused, and the statistic continues to rise. Oh my God, those statistics are scary. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is. It's mind-blowing. That's how I describe it. Wow. Okay, so any other questions from the audience or comments that you'd like to hear Stephanie give you some feedback on? If not, she will take us into the second segment.
If you have any question, guys, you could private message the page, you can message Psyche, you can message Spa, even Catgirls, Kelsey, IDGS. You all could reach out to any of your social media platforms, and there will be persons who will be eagerly to answer your questions, and we can always refer it to any of our lecturers or psychologists. So,
don't be afraid. No question is stupid. These things are important.
So moving on to the second segment, we're going to focus on the psychological implications of COVID-19 and how domestic violence affects. It continues the statistics continues to rise during this time. So we welcome Emily to lead us in this discussion. So Emily Bachan, she is representing the Student Psychology Association, and she's currently the president. She's the founder of Psychological Support and Guidance Enterprise, and she is a member and the public relations officer of the Psyche International Honor Society in Psychology. She's currently the marketing director of the Peer Counseling Association of the University of the West Indies, and the social media coordinator of the Youth Visionaries of Trinidad and Tobago. She's currently pursuing her bachelor's in psychology special. And we welcome you, Emily. And,
Thank you
we
so
thank
much.
you for joining us and, being a part of this discussion, because I know you're very much a very passionate advocate and young person. So let's go straight into the discussion.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
So my first question to you is, with all that is happening due to COVID-19, do you think that more persons are suffering from mental disorders? So with reference to COVID-19 and all the domestic violence cases that are popping up, do you think that more persons are experiencing these forms of disorders?
Okay, well, most definitely. I think that everyone's mental health is generally affected by COVID-19. And it, honestly speaking, it has an increase in individuals suffering from depression and anxiety and so much different types of mental illnesses, right? And it's all because people are being not forced, but we have to do it because you have to isolate and quarantine, and you can't see your friends and your family. And these are the things that can cause these mental illnesses. Now, I'm not saying that people didn't go through these things before COVID-19. There are people who had it before this pandemic, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. So I really think that it has a significant impact on most people's mental health and their psychosocial well-being, right? So prior to COVID-19 and the outbreak in the global and world and whatnot, statistics on the mental health conditions were already bleak, as in they already have a high statistics, like you mentioned, with gender-based violence, that there are so much of people that are suffering from different types of disorders, mental illnesses, and whatnot. And these are the things that people face on a daily basis, and people don't know about it, right? But now, more than ever, due to COVID-19, it has a more severe impact, right? And that's what this question is really asking, and it does, right? It does. And can you imagine the global economy loses more than $1 trillion US, right, per year, just because of people suffering from depression and anxiety and whatnot? Like, that is a lot of money, right? But at the same time, we do even have the proper mental health care to provide for everybody. Like, some people just cannot afford it, right? So imagine that is the amount of money just broadly, like it's amazing. Like, wow, we really need to improve on that, because there's so much people that don't get that attention that they need, right? The mental health conditions that contribute to like 25% of the people living with disabilities, in the world, like that is just like a fraction of people that have mental health problems. And that is, again, before COVID-19 even occurred, right? So imagine that. And depression is like a leading cause of disability that we have noticed and recognized that affects 264 million people. Can you imagine? Like, that is literally like TNT's whole population times 200. Like, that is not even close to, just like imagine that the amount of people that are suffering and are being affected by mental illnesses, right? Yes, there are people that they're suffering from their physical well-being and all that too, but mental health is skyrocketing, right, due to the COVID-19. And around half of all the mental health conditions, they start by the age of 14. So that's like pretty young. Like, there are like lots of teenagers and whatnot that are going through these things, that they're trying to find their self-identity and all these things, and sometimes they get peer pressured. And then if they're in an environment, just like you said in the first segment, like in abusive homes and whatnot, they tend to, they get affected even more. And if they don't have the proper resources and support, then obviously, they're going to, develop a mental illness or disorder or whatnot if they cannot get the help, right, that they need, right? And Suicide is also the second leading cause of death in young people from ages like 15 to 29. And that's a
Mhm.
wide range of people around that age. And we see it's happening all the time. Like imagine what the current statistics would look like right now due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Like it is really like it would be, I can't even imagine it, right? And I don't even want to read an article about that because it's so heartbreaking. Like there are people who are going through it and they just don't have the help, they don't have the resource, the support. And it's like every 40 seconds someone dies by suicide, right? As we speak, this is probably happening somewhere in the world, right? And more than 1 in 5 people live with a mental health problem, and they might die 10 to 20 years earlier than the general population, right? And that is
Mhm.
where we see there's a decrease of young people, going out, and then you have an increase of the older generation. And it's because there is a problem, as a societal problem that needs some help, right? So that we could move forward as we go along in the future. And I would say this is a result from isolation, especially during COVID-19, whole suicide ideation that people are having these thoughts and whatnot. It's because of isolation. Like right now, they have no choice but to stay away from the family, the friends, and even people who had suicide ideation or are suicidal or attempted. Like,
Mhm.
they would actually be more susceptible to doing it again, right? Because COVID-19 is not giving us the how to put it, the leisure of going out and taking a break, a change of an environment. All these things factor into people feeling just lost, and
Mhm.
they just don't know what to do, they don't know who to go to, they don't have the resources again, because sometimes people they don't have the right support around them to help them, to guide them where to go, like if it is you have a problem and whatnot, and that they suffer with it alone, right? And these are the things that are happening. And I think that humans, and I think most people, they would know this, that we are like social butterflies. We need to
Mhm.
interact. We need to keep that energy going with each other, because if we don't do that, we tend to get like a bit of, not bored, but we lose who we are, in a sense, because as a society, it's like socialization is a key component to survival, because without connecting with people and saying how will the world work, right? That's
Mhm.
why in schools and things that they say, you have to do group work, you have to do pair what, and all these things. It's to help you to become the best version of yourself, right? And yeah, and those are the things that are being prevalent. And I was reading this study. It's showing that COVID-19 is likely to exacerbate existing mental health symptoms to people that already, like I said before, already have diagnosis of like a mental health
Mhm.
problem with depression or anxiety or any type of disorder, eating disorder. There's so many different types in the category of the DSM-5, as you would know. And I was reading, there was like 12% of diagnosed people that indicated feelings of suicide, right? People who already got treatment and they are still feeling, like they're susceptible to do this, because, what's the point of life? We just stuck.
Mhm.
We're not moving forward. But I mean, I understand that how they would feel and how they would think, but again, we could curve that. We could combat that if we have the right people around them, if we have the support, if we
What?
have the
Mhm.
resources and all these things to navigate for persons that are really mentally ill, right? And it goes to show that persons that never experienced it, it would be new, it will be new to them that they're feeling these feelings, like not just the depression but the isolation in itself will take a whole new toll on a person, because you're so accustomed, you're going to work, or you're waking up in the morning, and you're going to school, and you're going to meet people, and and I'm sure like all of us we at some level would understand that because we have to stay away. We have online classes and all these things. We don't have the freedom to go out on campus anymore. And of course, it will affect us at some level, right? And
Yeah.
I was saying that these things, it also shows that persons that never experience a mental illness would have to find ways to cope, because sometimes the stressors probably at home, like I say, abusive families, or
Mm-hmm.
just people that are not your safe space. You're not in your safe space, so like you're home, but you're not feeling comfortable then, right? And these are the things that project and make people feel to do these things psychologically. And it's sad. It's really sad. But however, now that we really don't have a choice and we have to stay away and we have to, be with the strict protocols and whatnot, I strongly believe that, we should take advantage of the technology, because we have these outlets. I mean, of course, not everybody has Wi-Fi and all that. So I mean, I understand it would really be hard for persons who are, in situations of poverty and stuff, and they really cannot afford to do that. They would really, really feel it, because they can't even stay connected virtually, right? But to those that are going through mental illnesses and whatnot, or for the first time experiencing it, I think we should truly stay connected. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
continue to social distance, because we don't want COVID-19 to continue for the next few years. No, we don't want that, right? But we have to use the alternatives for now and make the best of it, right? Because it's how we as a society tackle the challenges now will determine how we will successfully recover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is about
Exactly.
building back communities that would be stronger in the end for the future, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to have all these things in place in order for people to actually be better, for the upcoming generations, right? And as we can see, mental health and the COVID-19 pandemic has uh, a very extreme impact, and it's like a pivotal moment in history. People are not going to forget this. This is something so new. I mean,
Oh,
there would have been other pandemics and things before, right? But the level of psychological impact it has have on so many people, it is a pivotal moment with health, mental health in particular. And I think that we are fighters. We can get through this, right? We
mm-hmm.
can find ways to cope. And let me tell you all something. What will work for one person might not work for somebody else, right? So just because, okay, let's say a friend likes to listen to music and that calms them, some people might actually get more depressed listening to music now.
Mm-hmm.
Music is a different story, because I mean, this isn't my arena. Like, I think that sad music will obviously elicit the feelings of feeling to cry and all these things. And if you listen to happy music, well, for me, it's like soca and saying, it will change the environment, this vibe, and it would help you cope with the situation of isolation and not getting to go out and all these things. So it's just a few tips. But like I say, what will work for one might not work for the others. And you have to find that for yourself, right? Because that is something that is individual for you. It's individuality, and you have to know yourself. You have to know what really makes you feel, better. And you can go for help and all of these things, but you have to make that decision within you, and nobody can force you or tell you what to do. It's up to you. And I really think that we are all trying our best at this point, and especially with these circumstances. And I want that everybody to keep trying to keep as sane as possible. And we are here. There are so many outlets that we could, you could reach out to. If you need somebody to talk to, if you don't have anybody, take advantage of the technology. And yeah, so that concludes my thoughts on that question and stuff.
Thank you so much, for enlightening us. It was well detailed, and I think it's important, as you mentioned, is what will work for one person will not work for the other. And it's
Yeah,
important that we all find our own coping mechanism. Whether if it's, like you said,
exactly.
music, whether if it's going outside, exercising,
Yeah.
reading a book, watching TV,
Mm-hmm.
baking. And it's important that we all find our own coping mechanism which suits for us.
Exactly. I
So,
agree.
furthermore, my second question for you is, what are some signs that we should look out for to help individuals that may be experiencing symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, any other mental disorders?
Okay, so I'm gonna focus this on depression because I feel like depression, like I said, is a very prevalent leading cause of, to suicide and stuff like that. So I'm gonna talk about the symptoms and signs that we should look out for. So most people, they would have experienced like regular sadness or everyday blues from time to time. We all feel sadness. That is normal, right? It's normal to feel scared. It's normal to feel happy. It's normal to feel sadness, right? Because
Mhm.
these are emotions. These are basic emotions that make us human, right? And the difference between being just regularly sad versus depression is the amount of time, the period of time that you feel sad, right? So I don't want you all to get confused. So depression would affect people in different ways. So, like, there are different types of categories that you need to look out for. So, you want to look out at their emotions, their thinking, their behavior, their physical well being, and their appearance. So, these are the core things that you have to look out when you're viewing a person that you think is probably going through depression, right? So, I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. So the emotional symptoms that you want to look out for is obviously sadness. They would look glum, what regular sadness would look like. They might even show fear, like if you ask them a question, they might be kind of jittery, or they just kind of like closing off a little bit, or they might feel
Mhm.
shame about whatever it is, dependent on the situation, they would feel shame. They might even have anxiety. They might feel guilty. They might even be angry. Right, they might show like a bit of aggression sometimes too, every now and then. So those are
Mhm.
some of the emotional symptoms that you want to pick up. Like if you're talking to a person and you find they're not being regular, or I should say normal and joyous, right? Which we all strive to be, right? The other one you want to look at is cognitive. So they're thinking, right? So the type of symptoms that you look for is like if the person is
Mhm.
like self-blaming, like they're looking at everything in a pessimistic kind of way. Everything is negative. They're not seeing the sunlight on the other side. They're not they're constantly worrying about whatever had happened, or and that is what is causing them to feel depressed, right? So there
Yeah.
are cognitive symptoms that you have to look at in there when obviously when they vocalize it. The cognitive is your thinking, right, up here in brain. And the other one that I want to point out is the behavioral symptoms. So that would range from withdrawal. So some people, they tend to they want to stay in their own little corner. They don't want to socialize. um
Mhm.
there are some people who, they neglect their responsibilities. So, for instance, if a person is have a responsibility of going to work, and every day they usually go to work normal, do their stuff, and come back home. They might go to work, but they just there at the desk, and it's like they can't do anything. Lack of motivation, like they don't have the energy or the zeal to do it. So behavioral sometimes will be really not feeling to go to work, or just want to stay in bed all day. So these are the symptoms that you want to look out for behaviorally. And a very important one that I want to stress on is if you notice someone is self-injuring themselves, which is like cutting, right? That is obviously an indication that something is definitely wrong. That is not
Mhm.
normal sadness. That is actually very serious, and you don't want people to, continue doing that. Now, I will tell you that people who cut, they do it because they feel a relief from the pain that they're
Mhm.
actually feeling. Because the fact that they are depressed, they feel numb. like they can't really get out of that state. So some people cut in order to feel alive then, right? Right. To take away that numbness in a way. And I'm not saying do not do this at home if you are feeling depressed. There are other coping mechanisms, right? But I'm letting you all know for the signs. Obviously, you want to know that, okay, this person I see, they're doing that. Oh, and another thing, if they're wearing long sleeves in hot weather, that is another indication that they're hiding it, that they're doing that, right? And these are the things that you have to look at it, especially if you're a parent and you notice your child is doing stuff like that. It, this is something serious. You can't just let it go and be like, oh, well, she just, no, that is serious, right? Because self-injuring sometimes leads to their suicidal ideation, and we don't want that, right? We do not want that. So last but not least, the other symptom that we want to look at is the physical symptoms. So the person might have like chronic fatigue, so like they're extremely tired. Some people, they either lose a lot of weight or they gain a lot of weight. So you could, like I say, parents or even friends, anybody could, obviously don't point it out to them because they would be very sensitive, and nobody likes that. Nobody wants to be told, oh, you're getting skinny or you're getting fat. No, there are other ways of, trying to help the person without doing those things, right? Because again, psychologically, that will affect their self-esteem and all these things, right? And some people physically, a physical symptom would be like they sleep in too much, right? For very long hours, they don't want to wake up. Some people, they have problems sleeping. They are like insomnia, like they're just awake and they just can't seem to shut off because of the feeling that they're feeling. The depression is real, right? And some other things are like, for instance, for adults, like grown people, like let's say it's a husband and a wife, and the wife is going through depression, might have a lack of sexual desire, right? And these are the little points and cues that you have to notice along the way that, something wrong. Let me find out what's going on, So these are the main signs that I think we should look out. And I mean, share it with everyone that you know, because sometimes people, they want to help, but they don't know what to look for, and that is a problem. So this is why I'm here today, to enlighten you on it. So yeah, that's about that question.
I see a couple questions coming in. We'll answer it after the discussion. So you can keep typing your questions in the comments, and we'll address it after. So thank you for enlightening us. And I think it's important that we all are aware of these symptoms so we can recognize any of our friends or families, if they're experiencing symptoms of the depression or anxiety. We need to be our brothers and sisters keeper, and it's important we, reach out, be supportive.
Yep.
If someone is sad or experiencing feelings of distress, be that support system, because we need each other. And especially in this time, we really, really need each other. So moving on, we have 2 more questions, and in fact 3. Sorry. So as we move on, this question is more focused to GBV and domestic violence. So as discussed in the previous segment, don't you think we are seeing more issues arising with the problem like GBV, domestic violence, and other family-related abusive relationships?
Of course, yes. I think during quarantine, this might have a tremendous impact on persons' psychological and physical well-being, right? Stress and social isolation is most likely to affect the brain and health and development. So like if you're looking at, especially like in young children, they might be more at risk in developing lifelong challenges by periods of prolonged exposure to like toxic persons in the home, right? Abusers and whatnot. And just being deprived healthcare and all of that, right? And not just healthcare, but psychological care, mental services I'm talking about. And parents that are abusive within the home, they right now would be spending obviously a lot of time with them, and the children don't have the outlet to feel safe. Like, let's say if they were going to school, they would have obviously have a teacher or get to go by the counselor or the guidance counselor and tell them about what's happening, and they don't have that outlet anymore because they're stuck home, right? And it is sad that they'll have to be witnessing all these very heinous, gruesome, according to you in the previous segment, these acts. It's like, how could you, a parent or a family member, abuse a child? Like, that is, I can't even. But going back to the point, yes, due to the whole lockdown, you would see more victims being affected. They don't have that safe space anymore. As we said before, the home, yes, that's supposed to be the safe space, but for some people, because they are living with the abuser, and sometimes people they would not have thought about leaving the partner that is abusive because they feel like there would be more complications, and that's okay, because the thing about it is true. Like, let's say you have kids with them, they're thinking about the mom, especially if it is the mother is being abused, thinking about the child and what will happen to the future. What if they are not financially stable, and she's still probably dependent on the abuser for those things, and that's the problem where they can't get out, right? But obviously we have to find ways to help them seek help if it gets bad, because we don't want it to end up where like in the cases you were talking about, where the woman, they get the death, they get the death due to the violence, and it is just be too late to combat it. Now, GBV and DV and all this, gender-based violence, domestic violence, and all these other types of violence, even emotional abuse, all these things, they all stem from conflicts and arguments, right? Now, sometimes, how to put it, families, it might start off with something real small, and one person had a view, and next person, they don't believe that, or and that is where it stems, that's where it does come about, and is sometimes best when you see these signs, you pick up the red flags at an early stage in order to help. So go to family therapy, you get them to see that, okay, this is not okay. Like, you can't be talking to me like that, or you cannot hit me, or you understand, like, these things are not normal, and people don't realize that because they get so comfortable with, well, it, that's just how we is, or that's the background, or no, that's not okay, and it's definitely not okay to die from these situations, right? The problem is that we don't speak up, and that is why we have to have these conversations. We don't talk about it. We see something and we say, nah, me ain't getting involved in that because that could be couture. Right? And in layman's term, with the Trinidadians, that's how we think, and we need to stop thinking like that, and think about this. Maybe if we speak up and we talk about it, or we pull aside and pull up on your brethren, these things would help, right? It would help. And the fact of the matter is, sometimes these consequences, it does happen over and over in a family. Sometimes you see it generation into generation, and the cycle kind of never ends. And it really it saddens, because you would see it happen, or you would hear your grandma or your grandpa, you're talking about, or you're witnessing it, and then you would go and put yourself in a relationship like that. So sometimes, I'm not blaming the victim here, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to say is, you have to pick up the signs too, to be more vigilant about who you associate with, right? As much as the abuser is not in their right mind, obviously they need help, right? Sometimes if you see something like that, and the person obviously being stubborn and all of these things to get help, right? Let's say it's a partner, right? Like in the situation with the ex-lover and all of that, like,
Yeah.
you have to learn to set your boundaries, right? Because it it would just blow up, right? It will never stop these things. So especially with the chaotic disruption due to COVID-19, coming back to the point, every day we are seeing that more and more abusive relationships are developing out of frustration. And again, some males, they have higher hormone levels with the aggression, and they don't know how to control it. They don't know how to control themselves, right? But that is not an excuse for doing these things to our girls and our women, right? And these things tend to get out of control, and it's sometimes displaced unintentionally to loved ones if it is a normal family situation. But at the same time, there are some situations where it escalates to the point it's just unhealthy, toxic relationships, and you have to know where to draw your line, right? And yes, sometimes there are children involved and you're thinking about that, but you had to think about your safety and the kids, right? And stuff like that. That's like for domestic violence, right? And gender-based violence here too, it could be in the reverse. Some men, they get abused in different ways, like the woman taking advantage of everything, and not realize, well, she cussing them up or something. It's how Trinidadian people is, and some
Yeah.
ladies could probably be a bit demanding and want things their way, and it could sometimes put a toll on the man of the house too, who had to provide and all these things. So these are the problems that are prevalent, right? And now, for instance, I think you brought it up. There was the teacher who got beaten to death with a hammer. I'm not too sure if that was an ex-lover or she was in a relationship. I didn't get the story too clear, but
And
right,
was the actor.
yeah, right. So I mean, in those situations, I read parts where the family was saying, I would have never think that would have happened to her. Like, it's like sometimes we don't pick up the signs. So you have to really be careful about, sometimes you say, yeah, I good. But it really mean that. Actually ask, so
Yeah.
how things going, and you would get an idea if she really in some, people indirectly will tell you things and you have to pick up on it and say, but that is something to write, like we had a, you had to fix that because it could cause more problems. And that will be the stepping stone where you have the opportunity to prevent or save a life, right? So yeah, so back to your question, I really hope that answered it. But yeah,
Yes, you did. You
it
answered
truly
it.
is, yeah,
And
it truly
I
is
just want to
a problem.
reiterate that,
Mm-hmm.
in the first segment, when I discussed pertaining to GBV, that again, it's
Right.
important, like you mentioned, and that, the
Yeah,
family institution is the first institution a child is brought up in, and it's the most important
exactly.
institution. It's where a child is grown and nurtured and taught before they're sent
Mm-hmm.
out to school. And I think it's
Yeah,
important
yeah.
that, at a young age, children are educated. Young boys, little boys are educated by their mothers and fathers to respect their
Mm-hmm.
sisters, to respect girls, to respect their
Yeah,
friends at school. And, the
I
family
agree.
institution is a vital and important role in helping
Yeah.
to make a difference. Like I mentioned, it's not just one person, and it's not just
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrists, not just PCA or CACOs or even the government. It's a whole community and a whole
Mm-hmm.
body that comes together
Yeah.
and needs to, speak up and stand against domestic
Mm-hmm.
violence. So
Yeah,
as we
I
move
totally
on,
agree.
can you give us some tips and methods in which persons can prevent suicide, as you mentioned? And I know it would
Okay.
answer one of the questions in the chat. So
Yeah.
enlighten
Okay.
us.
Okay, sure. So some of the tips now, there are about 3 main tips that you want to use if you know somebody that is suicidal or wants to attempt suicide, right? So the first thing is you need to speak up if you're worried about the person. Don't just look at the person and think, oh, they're gonna come to me and tell me what's the problem. Mm-mm. You you have to be the one to be strong for the person. So some of the questions you want to ask to start the conversation, because you know it's something touchy. You don't want to come off too strong, or you don't want to make the person feel like, oh, like, why are you asking me that or whatever, right? So one of the questions that I tend to use with just friends, if I feel like something is wrong, I would be like, recently I've noticed some differences in you and I'm wondering how you are doing. Simple as that, right? You want to ask it in a very genuine way, not to like ask them about the business or anything, just to show that, to assure them that, we care, right? We're seeing something a little off, or we worry. We want to know if you're good, right? Then you could go along in a conversation with the person then, and that is a pivotal moment where you're allowing the person to open up to you, to tell them, okay, well, maybe this is why I'm feeling XYZ, right? And another thing that you can ask is, have you thought about getting help, right? Because obviously we are not professionals, parents are not professionals. This is why we have mental health services that you can carry your children or relatives or whoever that needs the help. So you want to ask, have you thought about getting any help? And let's see if the person would be open to go for help, right? Because you don't want to rush and say, no, well, you had to come with me and this ain't right. Oh, no, you cannot force people to do things, right? Because then you're going to instill fear in the person. The person going to be like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. Like, they would just feel insecure and a little too, like you're invading a little too much. So you have to pet it. You have to know the right ways in how you say, your questions to them. Yeah. And tonality is also important. You cannot be braying at your children or stuff like that. That causes them to lock you off. Exactly. So that is another question that I think is very crucial. Another one is where you want to comfort the person. So even if the person say, no, not really, I don't want to talk to anybody else yet, maybe they're not ready, right? And you have to allow them to be as ready as possible. When they are ready, they will come back and say, well, mommy or daddy, maybe I should really go check this out, or this I sit in with, I'm not eating properly, something, right, of this sort, and allow them to come and ask for the help afterwards, right? And even if they don't want to, and they say, okay, well, I think I could deal with it on my own, right? But obviously, as a somebody supervising the situation, adult or whoever who's seeing the problem, they need to keep a close eye, because not because the person say they don't want help doesn't mean it is all well, right? Because sometimes some people, they're just too scared, right? They're too scared about what others would think. They would feel like, oh, people would judge me. And the stigma attached to the whole, oh, you're crazy or something like that. No, right? Obviously we don't want to think about it like that. And we're not supposed to, right? When somebody is showing these signs, right? It is not right. You're not supposed to judge somebody just because, they're feeling to kill themselves. That is not, So one of the comforting things that you could tell them is that, you're not alone in this, right? I'm here if you ever want to talk, right? If it is they don't want the professional help, you have to make it a safe space, because that way they will be able to open up. If you don't say those things, they are not going to open up by themselves, right? They will just be showing behaviors and physical symptoms and all these things. And it's like sometimes, people, like in families especially, I've seen this happen. You're seeing it happen before your eyes, but you're too afraid to go and ask the question because, oh, it might have some brawl or some argument or whatever. Sometimes it's better to do it that way before it's too late, before, because you want to take it in time, before you lose this person, because it's a life you're talking about, right? Suicide is no joking matter, right? So that is one of the main tips. in starting up the conversation, speaking when you are concerned, if you are seeing someone who is having suicidal ideation, right? They have an idea to do this to themselves, right? The second tip that I would give is to respond quickly in a crisis, right? You need to find out what is the situation that is causing them to feel this way, right? But obviously, you can't just push them, right? You don't want to what's the word I'm looking for? You don't want to to make the person feel like you're not supporting them, right? Because you have to validate their feelings. That's what I'm trying to say. You can't just say, no, well, don't kill yourself because it affects so and so and so. No, you you have to understand where they're coming from and why they are feeling this way, and then proceed and say, well, maybe you need to think about all the positive things that happen in your life, or bring something that shows them that they are valuable, right? Because we are all valuable. We are very precious human beings, and nobody's life is worth going down in that manner, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the second tip. The third and last tip that I would like to share is obviously offer help and support. So you can tell them that there's professional help. There are mental health services that I'll share just now, like hotlines that we could reach out to, especially in the virtual world now.
Online. We welcome Warriors for Wellness TT. Thank you for being here.
Welcome. Yeah. So the third tip obviously is offering actual help. You have to share with them real resources so that they could really go for the help, because without just saying, okay, you want help, but you have to give them actual information and follow up on the treatment too, because let's say the person did go for help. You want to check in and ask, so how did it go? Are you feeling any better? Are you getting these thoughts or anything like that? Do you think you want to go for another checkup or whatever? And these are the things what you need to do as a preventative measure to make sure that they don't relapse into the first stage that you meet them in, right? And obviously you have to constantly encourage positivity and help them change certain lifestyles. You're not changing the person, but you need to help them use the stuff that is how to put it, in their household that would make them feel more comfortable. If it's not just people but like things, sometimes change of environment is a very psychological thing, because some people, if they how to put it, colors have a effect on people and how they feel sometimes, and it actually has an exchange with your mood and all these things. So sometimes these are ways of offering help. If the person is not comfortable in their room and it making them feel down and these things, maybe repaint your room. Do something that would uplift the person, right? But obviously that has to come from the person within themselves, expressing that, okay, they need this, they need that to help them from not resorting to suicide and stuff like that. But that was just an example. There are different ways of helping them. And last but not least, make a safety plan. As a person looking on, you need to make a safety plan. Just because you know that the person is they have tendencies to do this action or thinking about doing this action, you need to make a safety plan, right? And of course you have to assess the risk level of the person's suicidal thoughts and action. So you have to know, I think there are about 5 levels, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember exactly, but there are different levels of persons that go through suicide, and you have to know the extremity or the severity of it to know, okay, if they reach level 4, it means no, I definitely have to step in and carry this person to get professional help. In them stages, you have to do that, because you don't want it to be that they reach level 4 into 5 ready to do what they have to do to kill themselves, and it's too late, right? So you have to make a safety plan. And those are the three major tips that I can give for persons that are suicidal or, having suicidal ideation. And I really, really hope that people do not resort to that, and find other coping mechanisms. I know things are stressful, right? Sometimes it feels like, what was the point, right? But there's a point. You have value. You are precious. You are worth so much more than just throwing away your entire life. So yeah.
I would just want you to address the question in the chat. One of the questions indicated, what is the best advice can someone give to someone who's suicidal? The person may not be open to talk to anyone else but you.
Okay. So, okay. Now, giving advice is like, sometimes some people take it in a different context where you're kind of telling the person what to do. We cannot do that, right? We cannot control people and their thoughts and their behaviors. Not even a professional. Professional cannot tell you what to do, right? Our job is to seek your needs. So if a person is not as open to talk about what is the root cause of them feeling to do this heinous action to themselves, then I think the best option is to, you have to ease it in a way, like sometimes just talk, you can talk about suicide in an open manner, right? Nothing is wrong with talking about it. That's a myth. It does not make the person do suicide, right? If you talk about it, maybe they might understand that, it's not worth doing that, meaning, like they have a whole life to live. They have so much to look forward to, like you could sway it in a more uplifting manner. If the person is a little they're closed in, like they don't want to open up, even if you ask certain questions using the techniques I just shared, you could do that in a way. Like you have to find regular conversation and kind of bring it in, like incorporate it, so that they don't feel attacked at the same time. So I hope that answers that question.
But it's important to know, once you know somebody who experienced symptoms of depression and display suicidal behavior, it's important that they seek professional help.
Yes,
a psychologist is the ideal person to help with this, and it's important that professional help is sought. Sorry. So on to our last question is, can you give some contact information or hotline numbers so that persons access during this time of COVID-19?
Yeah, COVID-19. Okay, sure. So I will put this, if I can edit it when I save it, I will put the actual numbers in the caption below so anybody could go back and access it for anybody who's in need. So there's a Rape Crisis Society of Trinidad and Tobago. I will still call it out. The number is, there's a North office and a South office. So the North one is 627-7273. And the South office is 657-5355. Right, so that's for Rape Crisis Society. You can reach out if you are aware of anybody that is either being raped or they are too scared to reach out. Those are the numbers that you can look out for. You can reach out to Childline 800-4321. That is the number that you could call. They also have I think it's free 24/7 service where you can go and just talk, for any child that is probably experiencing any sort of abuse in a home. And like I say, you don't have a safe space, find a way, if you have technology, use it, right? Don't be afraid. There are people that are willing to listen. There's Families in Action. The number is 628-2333. There's Lifeline TT. The number is 645-2800. There's the TNT Innovative Parenting Support. The number is 664-1520. And there is this new, in fact, both new, that the government has implemented, which is findcareTT.com. So if you go on that website, you could find any sort of mental health resource that you need that is specific to you and your needs, or to help a friend. And there's also this number, 877-WELL, as in WELL, and 800-WELL, WELL again. So I hope that these hotlines help. And of course, if I find anything else, I will put it in the caption description so that you all could, share it and use it for any of these issues that plague our people. And I truly hope that this segment has helped anybody that has any of these problems or witnessing these problems during the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah.
So thank you, Emily. One of our viewers indicated his comment was Trinidad and Tobago laws in dealing with persons suffering with mental health problems is so outdated and archaic. We need to make mental health be viewed just as important as physical. Yes, it's still a stigma attached to our society. Going to the therapist, some persons think, going to the therapist, is because it's crazy. We need to break that stigma. And, we need to speak up and end the stigma. It's okay to cry. It's okay to seek professional help. It's okay to go to a therapist or a psychologist. And, it's a stepping stone that the Ministry of Health, in collaboration with TTAP, which Emily mentioned, TT, and I do encourage you all to go check out their website. They have a lot of resources pertaining to impacts of COVID-19, gender-based violence, mental health tips.
All the mental illnesses you could think of.
And it was recent. In fact, it was launched last week. And I do encourage you to, check it out. Share the link to someone, because we need to
raise the people that don't need it. Share it. Just share it. Get the word out that it have these services.
Findcare.tt, we'll type it in the comments. So check it out. If you all have any more questions, feel free to message our page or Psychi or PCO, any of our.
There are so many clubs that we advocate for mental illnesses and mental health, and it's important. So you all can reach out, and we're here.
And check out our page. We have a listing of different upcoming events for the future, and also little stuff to raise awareness to the end gender-based violence response and stickers.
So you can purchase, and once you message your page, we would get it to you. Yeah. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on this panel discussion with me today. It was a pleasure. Like, I really am glad that we did this, because it's happening. It's really happening all around the world and daily. Like, you've seen it on the news, and it's something that we need to talk about and enlighten and educate as much as we can. And so thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this.
Shout out to Warriors for Wellness TT for joining us. There's another group that advocates for mental health. So check out their pages on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we end the live? I'd be happy. Me and Stephanie would be happy to answer if there's anything.
Hope we can. Yes, we will continue, my Cassie, to focus on several trending issues that are happening globally. So we'll try to get the message out there as the year goes by.
Okay. Well, it seems like everybody is good. So if there's any questions and stuff, you could put it in the comment when we end the live, and we could still respond via that method. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the audience. And if you all have missed anything, you could always go back and look at the live. That would be on our SPA's page. Okay. Have a good afternoon all. Bye.
Bye.